All right, today's episode 106 of the Deep Dives, and Dester, you're going to talk a little bit more about Korn, the band you've been listening to, and then a little bit about Kid Rock, and might get into the halftime shows. I have thoughts, controversial, but we'll see how it goes on episode 106.
All right. So, Kid Rock, because he was on the alternative halftime show.
Right.
That's what, I have this CD called Kid Rock. It's an older one. Devil Without a Cause is what the name of it is. And this is him young. Mm-hmm. He's very young here. He's probably 25 years younger than he is now. I don't know, but I don't think he's the same person, or he's evolving anyway. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Very interesting halftime show. Wow, I don't even know what to say about that. I didn't see it. I don't have that. I'm cordless at my house, so I don't have any network TV at all, and I couldn't watch any of it. But I did watch the alternative, some of that halftime show, and I'll talk about my thoughts on that. But I want to start with Korn. We started with Korn last week, and after we recorded 105, I bought the book Save Me From Myself, which was Brian Head's first book. We talked last week about him being in Korn, being extremely successful, millions of dollars, one of the top rock or metal bands going, and he bowed out because he didn't think it was consistent with his new faith. He just didn't know where Christ fit into that. He's since found out and has gone back to Korn, and I found out by reading or listening to the first book that the bass player also, and I can't remember his name right now, the bass player has also been saved. So we've got two of the four main people in Korn that are Christ followers now. Not only Christ followers, but what they do to answer the question, where is Christ in this? They're actually asking, what can we do? What are we doing? This is their desires changed, right? Whenever we talk about starting to follow Christ, it's not how do I get away from so-and-so, or how do I stop doing so-and-so. Many times Christ changes your desire. With me, it was, what do I do with Christ in bike racing? How is that? Because it engulfed my life. Everything I put in my mouth, every gram, every ounce of food that I ate had something to do with what I was going to do the next day in training. And I would hit every number. I had coaches, and I hit every number, heart rate per second or per minute, power output, everything. I would hit those numbers the next day. And that gave me the physical, spiritual, it gave me the confidence and the physical ability to do what I wanted to do. And if I didn't hit I was so sold in that if I didn't hit those numbers, I felt like somebody had a hand up on me. So I had to hit those numbers. I was kind of fooling myself. I knew, there's some grace there, but whatever. But it was so important to me that I would eat, sleep, drink, and just do everything cycling. But where is Christ in this after I rededicated my life? And I realized that I don't want to race my bike as much as I used to. You know what I mean? It wasn't where is Christ in this, but it was, is this what you really want to do? And that's what Brian is saying. Brian and his bass player is saying, we want to continue to do this, but what do we do? This is what they did. They would go, I think it was before the concerts, they would get together and they would start walking around like the parking lots, go out in the audiences and things, and ask if people needed prayer. and they would sit there and pray. I want you to think about that. This is one of the top metal bands. And if you've ever seen Brian, he can't walk around. This dude can't go into a grocery store without people going, who in the world is that? Because he's got dreadlocks. A white guy. His eyelids are tattooed. He's got other tattoos all over the place. And he's got dreadlocks down to his back. Down to his butt. You just don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No matter where you go, me in Los Angeles, and people are going, yeah, that's an interesting looking guy. But around here in Pensacola, wow. So he, especially if it's a concert that people are going to see Korn, they know what he looks like. And he goes out in the parking lot. What kind of, pandemonium would that cause? They didn't really get into that. They didn't talk about that. But that's what they did. And I believe they started by just going like backstage, talking to the stage managers, things like that, you know what I mean, where they wouldn't draw a crowd. And they probably went to the people who had backstage passes. That's just what I'm kind of thinking. But they would do that. And this is interesting, what is in the book. He said he saw miracles happen. He said he saw, Chris, he saw a guy's leg grow 3 inches because he was limping, and he walked away not limping because his legs weren't. And listen, I'm not saying that's not true. I'm not saying that didn't happen, but I've never witnessed anything like that. We know it happens. It has happened in the Bible. Many times people have been healed that way. But he claims, why would this guy put it in his book?
Right.
If he didn't witness it, he claims he witnessed it happen. And I'll be honest with you. I have, I'm saved. I love Jesus. But I go, really?
Yeah.
Did that really? I'm just being honest. You know what I mean? I've never seen anything like that.
That's why they call it supernatural, because it defies what we think of as a natural thing.
Sure.
Whether it did or didn't happen, obviously we can't say because we weren't there.
It's not up to us, yeah.
But it was at least something that he believed happened,
right,
to the extent that he was willing to put it in his book on in front of a national audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That, even if I question that, who am I to question that? It does not stop me from continuing on listening to him. You know what I mean, and learning about him, and continuing to be interested in what's going on. So anyway, that saved me from myself. That book it's dark, Chris. It's dark in that he goes into his darkest times with his old girlfriend, his family. He grew up in a family, middle class. Everybody was good, and everything, and he had deep, dark depression as he was growing up. And I had to stop listening to the book because it was just several chapters of dark.
Was it starting to affect you?
Yeah, I was riding my bike.
Yeah,
and it started to affect me in that I just didn't want to hear it.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear about spousal abuse while I'm navigating through a beautiful woods trail. You know what I mean? I don't mind listening to it for a little bit, but a couple of chapters of deep talking very specifically about that, I just had to. I'm done. I'll come back to it. You know what I mean? But it's a very honest book. He said he doesn't know how it was the drugs. He thought and maybe demons that were. He would beat his girlfriend. His girlfriend would beat him. And they'd go back at each other. Just the typical type of spousal abuse that you hear about and maybe experience if you're listening to this, that it's an addiction. They're addicted to drugs and they're addicted to each other. And this ends up, was this the one? I think the girl that he's talking about is Janae, his daughter's mother. She ended up getting into a crowd of skinheads and just going off the deep end. That's why she's not involved with or it wasn't, as far as I can tell, with the book that I'm reading. That's some deep, dark stuff, man.
Yeah.
It really, really is. She was cheating on him like left and right, and he admits that at the time he was doing things with women that he didn't consider cheating, but
Right.
He knows now. He says, I was fooling myself.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't do so and so, I told myself I wasn't cheating. Well,
Right.
I think we can all read it between the lines there, you know what I mean, and figure what that was. But in his mind, he wasn't, and she claimed she wasn't, but
Isn't that a funny trick we often pull on ourselves, though?
Yeah.
Is like, we'll just redefine what a word means, and based on that new definition we've come up
Democrats do it all the time.
with, so do Republicans.
So do Republicans.
Anyone in politics seems
Yep.
to do that.
Yep.
But even us in our own Christian lives, we tend to do that
Yep.
without realizing. It's like, well, technically, I am not doing this one exact thing. So,
What comes to mind is, what is rich? Remember back, I think it was Obama. I
yeah,
remember only the rich will be taxed. Well, making $30,000,
Yeah.
we're saying you're rich.
Yep.
Okay, that's smart. Anyway, so that I still am only halfway through, 3/4 of the way through one book and halfway through the other book, and I'll continue to. I still don't have any more CDs to listen to of Korn, but I continue to watch the videos of the concerts, and they are very, very interesting. They're just different. That band has changed what did you call? I can't remember. You called it something new metal. I think it was it new metal, called new metal. Almost a different genre of music. Very interesting. So I'll keep peppering Korn in there as we go forth. But
peppercorn.
What's that?
Sorry, peppercorn.
Peppercorn. So talking about Kid Rock / the halftime show of the Super Bowl last week, and the alternative halftime show, which was new. What was it, Chris?
Bad Bunny.
So the halftime show was Bad Bunny.
Bad
the alternative
Bunny.
one
alternative,
that Turning Point USA did was Kid Rock.
Okay, Turning
And a
Point
couple other
USA
people.
is the one that I didn't watch any of Bad Bunny. My understanding was it was all in Spanish, and the crowd response was not even mixed. It was just kind of silent. I didn't see it, so that's just what I've heard. Did you see any of it, Chris? I know you're a big Bad Bunny fan. I've never heard of Bad. Have you ever heard of Bad Bunny before?
No.
I don't even.
He made the news a couple weeks ago, I think,
Okay.
because of an award show where he got up and had some political platform he wanted to.
Good for him.
Yeah,
All right.
just like all of them. But
That's
other than that, I had no idea who he was until the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so the alternative halftime show, which, by the way, I hope that catches on. I hope that other organizations catch on and start taking things away from, because we know how the Super Bowl halftime shows are going, right? I just like having choices.
Lady Gaga was in this halftime show.
She was, and whenever she was on it, I was thinking the same thing about her. I don't want to see Lady Gaga. I didn't know anything about her. You know what I mean? You're right. That's a good point. Now I'm interested in Lady Gaga. If she was on next week, I'd make an appointment to see her.
Yeah.
And I would say the same thing that I've said about her before, that it's not my genre,
Yeah.
but she sure is talented. But anyway, so I went back on YouTube and I started watching the alternative to the halftime show. In this country band, they did the Star Spangled Banner to begin with. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what the name of the band was?
Well, it started out with just one guy.
One guy.
And I don't know who he is.
It was one guy with the band, and then the band came and joined him, and then there's like four guys, and the four guys joined the band. So
Yeah.
it was created like that, and it was country music, like hard country music,
Right.
and it just surprised me because the guy just started rapping.
Uh-huh.
It was his old country guy, cowboy hat. He's
Yeah.
and he goes, boom, ba, ba, dee, ba, ba, dee, ba, da, ba. He starts rapping. I'm going, what just happened?
Right.
And I realized this is a new genre
Yeah.
of country music.
Yep.
I'm way behind on country music, I guess. But I thought, well, that's interesting. I didn't hate it. I was just surprised.
Right.
And I was happy. And I've talked on here before about Donna and I used to go to movies, and she used to take me to movies, and I'd close my eyes, and she would I would hold her hand and she would take me in and we sit down, not having any idea what the movie is about.
Right.
I loved doing that. Most of the time I'd like the movie. So I enjoyed not having any clue of what this band was about.
Yeah.
But it was just so funny that I'm sitting here listening to this country music and he starts rapping. I'm like, I wouldn't have bet that was going to happen. So anyway, interested in doing some research on that and seeing what's going on there. So I also watched the Kid Rock, I don't know if he just did one song. I've watched one song of him on this halftime show, and man, he gave a testimony. Mm-hmm. He said, "There's a book that's dusty in your house that needs some attention, and it's the Bible." Mm-hmm. And he started talking about Jesus, and I mean, anybody can do that. You know, it's easy to do that, but he has a history of mentioning faith, and it seems to me like he is evolving like all of us have. He just does it in front of a camera, you know, and for somebody to have a following like him, man, I'm all about it. You know what I mean? I am all about somebody like turning from Saul to Paul. You know, Kid Rock turning from Kid Rock to
Rob Ritchie.
Rob Ritchie. Yeah. And they introduced him as Rob Ritchie.
Yep.
I don't think they said Kid Rock at all. I don't know. I didn't see the whole thing, but
so there was a story arc that was being played out there.
Okay.
And we're going to start to get into my thoughts about all this stuff.
Good.
So stop me if you don't want to get there yet.
All right. What are your thoughts, sir?
So I couldn't care less about the Super Bowl. I've never watched an entire Super Bowl. I usually I couldn't care less about the Super Bowl commercials or the halftime shows or whatever. The reason this one in particular interested me was because of how both sides were presenting themselves as the complete opposite of the other. And you know, recently with the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the rise in fame of Turning Point USA, and this being marketed as like a pro-America, pro-family, you know, alternative to the artist that was going to be featured in the regular Super Bowl, you know, that got me interested. So I watched both of them the next day online, and there's some, and obviously by the time the next day happened, everybody has taken sides, and if you watched the one that I didn't watch, then there's something wrong about you, and vice versa, and the arguments were the same on both sides. Like, I can't believe you listened to this artist because he did such and such, and so you kind of have to filter all that out, because if both sides are looking at each other and saying the exact same thing about each other, I see that as canceling itself out. Yeah. You know, on the Super Bowl side, you have Bad Bunny, who is notorious in his songs for being the most vulgar.
Is that right?
Yes, like and like even like purposefully so. Songs that are just, and you can look up the lyrics, like the songs that he's saying there. When you look up the lyrics, just the most vile, like reprehensible, just obvious, like horrible, just sex acts, objectifying women, being proud of that, you know, and it's not just that, but like if you were to go through, you know, the seven deadly sins in the Bible, you know, the ones like these are the sins that God hates, you know, the most. It's like these. It seems like these sins are exhibited proudly in the lyrics of this guy's songs. Now, to Bad Bunny's credit, maybe the songs that he's saying that normally have those lyrics, most of those lyrics were scrubbed from the versions that he sang in the Super Bowl, because the ones he sang at the Super Bowl were like abbreviated versions. They're all strung together into one continuous performance, all this kind of stuff.
Medley.
Yeah. And so among all of that, you have the dancers and the choreography and the imagery of Puerto Rico and the sugarcane fields and all that kind of stuff. So it was very cultural in that respect, which, good thing. We want to highlight other cultures and stuff like that. And then way in the background, there is a billboard that would flash up a message every now and then. And one of them was, the only thing stronger than hate is love. Everybody focused on that sign and said, this is what this entire thing means. And if you watched anything else other than what this Super Bowl halftime show was, then that implies that you are against what that billboard way in the background behind all of this other stuff happening means. And that tells me all I need to know about you. And so that's the way it was presented. And then on the other side, you have the Turning Point USA one, which was presented as a story arc. Now, let's take the music of Kid Rock. Kid Rock also has a history of putting very reprehensible lyrics in his songs. And there's no excuse for that. We're looking at two secular individuals who are in the entertainment industry, and for some reason, the most like abject sin sells the most records, it seems. And so that's where usually the lyrics and the style of secular music tends to go. And Kid Rock was no exception to that. And one of the songs the song he sang as Kid Rock was one of those songs. And which, when you go and look up the lyrics, there's lyrics about underage sex, and saying that it may be illegal, but it's preferred, implying that kind of thing. Now, to Kid Rock's credit, just like Bad Bunny, that part was scrubbed from the version that was presented on national television. But the difference between the two. Oh, and so we go forward from the Kid Rock song to the country music song, and in a production that's sold as family friendly, pro USA, even containing a Christian message. Even the country songs mention things like having beer with the boys, and things that a lot of Christians wouldn't say these are Christian lyrics or something that a Christian should exhibit. And then there's a classical music sort of bridge, and then Kid Rock comes out. Although he's not Kid Rock, he comes out as Rob Ritchie, and he sings this song about God giving you second chances, and him being able to save people that have had horrible pasts and things like that, and presents that gospel message. And so when you look at that story arc, what was happening there was Kid Rock was giving his testimony as that production, because he came out, started as Kid Rock, sang one of the songs that Kid Rock was popular for, and you see this transition for these country songs where it's no longer like the Kid Rock, but it's this transition like we all have when we become saved. It's not like this switch turns off and all of a sudden we're a perfect human being. Yeah. We still struggle with certain elements from our old lives on this path that we take in trying to become more Christ-like. And so you see that story arc of Kid Rock becoming dissatisfied with his life and trying to make things better. And then ultimately you have this transition point. That was the classical music part where he does receive Christ as a savior. And then it turns testimonial, where he's trying tell that to other people as Rob Ritchie, and he's no longer Kid Rock. So that was the story arc behind it. And when you look at both face to face, like there's a lot of criticisms that are common to both. One is, the people who watched the Bad Bunny thing look at the TPUSA and like, well, it's all a bunch of white people, a bunch of it's trying to whitewash what would otherwise be a culturally diverse, artistic display that we see the Super Bowl thing. So it's inherently racist, right? Well, you can say the same thing about the Bad Bunny. It's primarily Puerto Rican. The countries that he mentioned at the end where we all come together were all pretty much South American countries. He said nothing about, Africa, Asia, Europe, nothing like that. So you can call that the same thing. Like at some point, both sides excluded something when it comes to culture and race. And so that criticism, if it's a valid criticism, can be leveled at both. So I think it cancels itself out. I'm running on way too long, but this is something that I've been really fed up with the past couple days.
That's good preaching, Josh. Keep on preaching.
Because everybody, no matter which one they watched, points to the other side and says, "You're reprehensible because you didn't watch the one I watched." And I have my opinions on which one was better content-wise than the other. I have my my opinions on which one was better production-wise than the other, and those aren't the same answers. But if we're just looking at the content of what was presented, regardless of what you can say about the song choice or whatever, there was one that at least attempts to orient you in a direction towards better things. And there is another one that put an effort forward, but that effort was juxtaposed on a background of the most reprehensible lifestyles and lyrics and actions and practices ever. And so if that's your criteria, here again, I'm sort of inserting my own opinions on this stuff, and everyone's going to have their different opinion. But that's my thoughts on it. I don't think we should be looking at this as one is a clear winner over the other, or if you looked at this, if you watched this one and not the one I watched, then you're a horrible person. I think there's, as usual, there's some third party that benefits from us hating each other, and I don't really care which one you watched, or what your reasons were for watching it. I just think, like most things, there's way more important things to be fighting about, and I think that the most of the fighting about these is because nobody really understands either of them. In order for me to understand the Bad Bunny one, I had to copy and paste the transcript into Google Translate and see what they were saying in English and look at it that way. And what I found in English wasn't that great. What I found in English on the other one probably wouldn't be what I would sing, at a church worship service. But here again, they were presenting a story arc of Rob Ritchie's transformation. So I don't know. I think there's something to that. Anyway, so there you go. Sorry to take that over.
I like that he's talking about a transformation. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes from here.
Right.
Like, is that that's current? That's the most current thing that we can get. It was just a couple of days ago, and if this is a true transformation, I kind of see him taking that and going on tour with it. Starting like the first part of the show as Kid Rock,
right,
and then the second part of the show as Rob Ritchie.
Yeah,
I can see that formula working.
And one of the criticisms that keeps getting brought up is, well, if he truly is saved, why is he still performing as Kid Rock? And I totally get that. I totally understand that. But if you're trying to get up and tell a testimony in a series of songs, you have to start with where you came from. It doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you're performing that with the same intent that you did when you were in that world.
That's right.
this is an artistic performance, and an artistic performance isn't coming up and standing behind a microphone and narrating. These are the songs I used to sing and what they used to talk about, and I no longer do that anymore. Now I'm going to perform a different song.
Right.
That doesn't make for a entertaining performance.
Right.
Or a meaningful performance in a lot of people.
Brian Head from Korn addressed that. How can he go back to Korn and do some of the same songs with some of the words that are in there whenever he's a sold out Christ follower? And he fought with that, and he talked, he prayed about it, and he talked to the people that he trusts, his mentors, his pastors, and everything. He said, still, overall, he said, I think Christ can shoulder those bad words that are on there. I don't write the lyrics. My lyrics aren't going to have that type of content, but I'm going to play the songs that Korn has. And he says himself, he says, there's a couple I just refuse to do.
Yeah.
It's not a whole huge list. There's a couple. F words are in those lyrics. I don't think he'll do anything that with a GD in it. You know what I mean? If you want to, I think that's a line of his. It would be of mine, but he's up there. We walk around in our life doing the same thing that he's doing on stage. We walk around in life and doing things that we shouldn't be doing as Christ followers. He's doing it on stage. Kid Rock's doing it on stage. I applaud those guys for being in the limelight and navigating a way to acknowledge their past and to acknowledge their present and projecting their future.
Yeah, and really, like across the board, whether it's Kid Rock or Bad Bunny or Lady Gaga or whatever, if you're any kind of artist in this in today's world, it takes a lot of courage to put yourself in the public eye for anything, because it doesn't matter what you do.
Yes,
someone's going to have a problem with it and is going to take to social media and just badmouth the snot out of you. So that's another one of those things that I see as kind of equivalent across the field, whether it's secular or sacred. Is if you're willing to put yourself in the public eye and subject yourself to public scrutiny, you got a lot more courage than I do.
I enjoy reading and learning about these public figures because it reminds me that they're just people like we are. My evolution was the same thing. Becoming closer to Christ. Geez, crow, man. As a youth, there's no way you could point to me and go, that young man is a Christ follower. There's no reason you would do that. There's no reason you would do that.
There's this song, I can't remember who sings it, but it's called "Remind Me, Dear Lord," and the lyrics that always stuck out in the chorus, it says, "Roll back the curtain of memory now and then, show me where you've brought me from and where I could have been." And I see that as kind of like what was going on with the Kid Rock versus Rob Ritchie thing, or the guy from Korn playing those old songs, is rolling back that curtain of memory, being shown that where God brought you from and where you could have been.
Right.
And that's a concept that's all throughout Scripture too, with God telling Israel to make memorials, because sometimes they had bad things in their past that needed to be remembered, so that they wouldn't make that mistake again. And it's a hard concept.
Boy, we went through a time in the United States not long ago where we erased those monuments. How many years ago was that? Whenever there was a trend of going down and taking down all the monuments of the southern.
Just about 4 or 5.
Man, it wasn't that long ago.
Yep.
We weren't looking at them and going, that was. We made some mistakes back then. We're revising history.
Yes.
Right. And
if you can revise history, you can make the past look like whatever you want.
Yeah, that's right.
That's 1984 in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I enjoyed it. I'll continue to look into Kid Rock and see how he evolves. What is constant with me, at least I can honestly say I can say it with Brian Head, that what turned him around, initially God used his daughter. God used his fatherhood, Brian's fatherhood, to make him start looking in a different direction. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was Kid Rock's story too. I'll look into it and see. But it seems to me like there's a lot of people that once they become a parent, they want something better for their child. Well, what's better for it seems like most people think about some type of faith, right? And they it's no secret, even at our church, all churches, parents drop their kids off at Sunday school and then go back home and come back and pick them up. Well, why would you do that? I want a couple hours to myself. Well, take them to the library or say, why church?
Right.
Why is church better? Because they got good morals and all this. Okay, that's fine. If it's good for your kid, perhaps it's good for all of us.
It is weird how, like, if we're asked point blank, what's the solution to whatever we're going through, we would always say God. But when we're going through it, we tend to run from God.
That's true.
Like Jonah is a perfect example of that, right? And it happens throughout Scripture and throughout our lives. But it's always fun to me when people do that.
Well, Josh, you had class last night.
Yes,
I wasn't there. I'm taking a little time off, but. Did y'all talk about Daniel? Talk about Daniel again?
Jude.
Jude. Talked about Jude.
No, it was really good. We're going through this this Bible study through the book of Jude, which, I mean, for being a book with only one chapter,
yes,
it is packed with stuff because there's so many allusions to and references to very significant events in the Old Testament that we might be on one single verse for 3 weeks because we're exploring all those. And last night was sort of this transition in Jude, because he starts out by warning us about these dangerous ideologies and things that are creeping into the church and are corrupting the gospel message. Unawares, right? Kind of like the stuff that we've been experiencing the last couple days with Christian infighting about Super Bowl halftime shows and whatnot. But I got to stop thinking about that, because that gets me fired up. It's
pricked an interest in you, hasn't it?
Yes.
Not an interest, but it's kind of gotten under your skin a little
bit. It has gotten under my skin quite a bit because I've been going through Jude. And like, man, how insidious is it, and how like genius really is it of Satan to cause such fighting in churches to use two things so stupid as Super Bowl halftime show to make us hate each other. Like, there are Christians who are pointing at each other and saying, you watch that show, you're a horrible person. And the other person pointing right back and saying the exact same thing. It just keeps reminding me, like, the church has never been hurt by outside attacks. It's always been us cannibalizing each other and fighting each other.
That's the genius of it.
Yeah. And the more you see it, the more you get ticked off when you see it. But anyway, so back to Jude. In the past several weeks, as we've been sort of going through this in the podcast as well, Jude gives these these three examples of groups of people who despise dominion, speak evil of dignities, and defile their flesh. Right? They're filthy dreamers. He calls them. And the three examples that he gave of people who do that were Israel, their rebellion. Hey, we got a little cat visitor. Cat just walked by our podcast door. So anyway, Israel, their various rebellions as they're wandering through the wilderness, and even in Canaan, that kind of stuff. I talked about the angels that fell. We talked about Sodom and Gomorrah, and those were the three examples that Jude said. They speak evil of dignities, they despise dominion, they defile their flesh, they're filthy dreamers, all this stuff. And then
sounds like a rap song,
right?
Anyway,
a country rap song.
Yeah.
So he goes from that. He bridges to what the next three examples are going to be, which we'll talk about in weeks to come. But the bridge was speaking evil of dignities. He said, even Michael the archangel. Well, actually, let me look it up so I don't mess up the quote. But there's this account in the Old Testament where Moses is not on his deathbed because he wasn't old and decrepit. It was just the end of his life, and the end of his life was very unique because God is the one that was responsible for burying him when he died, and so Jude says, Michael, the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, the Lord rebuke thee. Now, this is kind of new information if you're reading through Scripture, because back at the end of Deuteronomy, at the end of Moses' life, when he's on Mount Pisgah and he's looking across Jordan into the Promised Land, he's having this conversation with God, and he dies there. And God buries his body, and the Bible tells us that no one knows where Moses was buried, but he's buried somewhere in the valley in the mountains, in those mountains there. And so nobody knows where Moses is buried, and it's really never mentioned again until we get to Jude in the New Testament. And this weird thing is apparently there was some dispute between Michael and Satan about the body of Moses. Like, what's that all about? Well, when you go back and you read the conditions around Moses and Aaron not being in the Promised Land, we start to get some interesting background info that gives us some more information about this. So, when they first get out of Egypt, they cross the Red Sea, all this stuff. One of the first things Israel did was they start complaining about water, and like, why'd you bring us out here to die? We're all thirsty, all this kind of stuff. And so they pull up to Mount Horeb, which is right next to Mount Sinai, and God says, go up to Mount Horeb. There's a huge rock up there. Use the same staff that you used to part the red, that you held out when the Red Sea was parted, and hit that rock, and water will come out. And so he did that. By the way, you can still go to that mountain and see that rock today. It's pretty cool. There's pictures of it online everywhere. But he went and he hit that rock, and water came out. Well, then, fast forward 40 years later, they've already been wandering through the wilderness. They're camping around the tabernacle. They've already they're ready to go into the Promised Land, and they start complaining about water again. And so now they're quite a bit north of Mount Horeb. They're near another mountain called Mount Hor, and God says, okay, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go up to this mountain, and there's a rock there. Speak to the rock, and water will come out. Well, by this time, Moses has been going through about 40 years of not just the previous generation of Israel, but the current generation of Israel, just complaining and complaining and complaining. And every time it's the same thing. Why did God bring us out here to die? Wish we were back in Egypt, because they had X, Y, and Z in Egypt, and that was great. And we wish we were back there instead of out here. And the whole thing is horrible. And Moses is just fed up. He and Aaron both. And so they go up to the top of Mount Hor, and Moses doesn't speak to the rock. He just starts beating the snot out of it with his staff again. Water does come out and quench Israel's thirst. But God has a little conversation with Moses and says, you didn't do what I told you to do. So because of that, you're not going to be, you and Aaron, you're not going into the Promised Land. Aaron was was buried there. We know where he was buried. There's actually a monument today on the top of Mount Hor called Aaron's burial place that you can go and see. But
that's a clever name,
right? Yeah. What happened here? I don't know. Look at the sign. But Moses was taken further north to Mount Pisgah, right on the outskirts of Canaan, right across the Jordan River, and that's where he died. But that's why Moses and Aaron weren't part of the remaining generation that entered the Promised Land because of that. And the next question is, well, what's the big deal? It's the rock. Well, all throughout the Old Testament, God keeps setting up pictures of things that are either attributes of Him or something that points forward to Christ. And God always takes those images that He sets up extremely seriously, and this is no exception. In 1 Corinthians, that rock is used as an analogy of Christ. Christ was only sacrificed once. That's kind of the theme of the book of Hebrews, even, is that there's a sacrifice once for our sin, and it was all taken care of. We don't keep doing that. And that rock was used as an analogy. Well, Moses was supposed to strike the rock once, and next time he was supposed to speak to it. Kind of like in salvation, Christ was sacrificed once, and now we just approach Him. We approach the throne boldly because of that sacrifice and what Christ had done for us. And so Moses corrupted that image, and that's why he wasn't allowed to go into the Promised Land, he and Aaron. So we get to Jude, and we read this, that at the time that Moses was buried, there seems to be some argument between Michael and Satan about what to do about his body. Well, there's this other. Now, let's pull back a little bit. If in our conversation, if I reference some work of literature, like say, the example I gave last night is, we need to. You've heard of like Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey. This really old story, work of literature. There's a character in there named Odysseus who's going on this long trip, and that's the story of Iliad and the Odyssey. And there's this one part in particular where Odysseus, his ship and his men are going through this area where there's these sirens, these like beautiful women who their song will lead you in and they'll destroy you. And it's like this irresistible song of the sirens, and they have to go through this area where these sirens exist. So Odysseus's plan is that he's going to have himself tied to the mast of his ship so he can't respond to the siren song. And I gave that as an example. I said, what if I were to say that we need to have the same kind of resolve that Odysseus had when he tied himself to the mast of his ship so he wouldn't be caught in the trap of the sirens? Am I saying that actually happened? Well, of course not. It's a literary reference that a lot of people are familiar with, that work of fiction, that I can use that as an example. I said there's a reference in verse 9 of Jude that might have actually happened, may not have happened. We don't know. But there's an apocryphal writing called the Assumption of Moses that was like, some people associate it with, being like a document that was written in the 1st century AD that may have been preserving an oral tradition or a copy of a document from earlier. Who knows? But it talks about, it's supposedly recounts a lot of things that Moses said that aren't necessarily recorded in Scripture, and it records the events of his death. And in this work, The Assumption of Moses, it talks about this argument between Michael and Satan about the body of Moses, saying that Satan tried to convince the archangel Michael that he should be the one to bury, that Satan should be the one to bury the body, because he said, well, I'm the Lord of matter. In other words, this is just a lump of matter now. It's just a dead body. I should be the one that's responsible for burying it. And Michael said, no, God's told me to bury it. And so they go back and forth with this argument. And in this argument, Michael says, the Lord rebuke you, which is kind of interesting because Michael in his own power, the archangel, doesn't come at Satan in his own authority. He comes in the authority of God. And whether or not that event actually happened or not, it was referenced in a piece of literature that was widely available at the time that Jude was written, and other people would have recognized it. And Jude used that as an example of what kind of authority do we actually have in this spiritual battle that's being waged. And he gave this example of Michael. He said, even Michael, the archangel, the angel that's associated with fighting on behalf of Israel, even he, when arguing with Satan about the body of Moses, he didn't say, I rebuke you. He said, the Lord rebuke you. And he used that to show like there's a practice that's entering into the churches, into Christian circles now, where we think there's something about us that we now have the authority to bind Satan or to have this authority that we don't have. And if we're looking at this from the perspective of like Ephesians 6, where it says we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, we wrestle against principalities, powers, spiritual wickedness in high places, these types of things, like, yes, we're involved in these are the things we wrestle with, but ultimately the battle itself belongs to the Lord. And the only reason we have the ability to be in this war on the good side is because of what Christ did for us in the beginning. All of our righteousnesses are as filthy rags. It's Christ's righteousness that brings us into this, into the winning side. And so Jude is alluding to that and says, be careful what you think you are, because any authority we have comes from God. And ultimately, he's the one that wages the battle. He's the one that wins the war, and we need to remember that. And so that's sort of this interesting bridge, because right after that, he says, he goes back and turns his attention back on these people that are creeping into the church, and he says, but these speak evil of those things which they know not, but what they know naturally is brute beasts, and those things they corrupt themselves. Woe to them. So in other words, these people that we're talking about, not only do they, do the opposite of what Michael does. They try to do things in their own power, but they're speaking about things that they don't even understand. And the only things they do understand, the natural things, it corrupts them. And then he's going to give 3 examples, which we'll get into in upcoming weeks, to sort of explain that. But it's just interesting because, think about in our own lives, the things that we face. What do we often do? We try to take matters into our own hands instead of giving it over to God. We say, okay, I will rebuke this situation instead of the Lord will rebuke this situation. And I'm guilty of this time and time again, especially as an engineer, because engineers, we're trained to be the experts in the room, and people come to us for answers. And that tends to filter or to spill over into the rest of our life. And like, well, any situation that comes up, I'm the expert in the room. I should be able to solve this. And anything that faces me, I will rebuke it. Not as a Christian, realizing we wrestle against spiritual things. Mm-hmm. I need someone who's an expert in spiritual battle. The Lord rebuke you. It's a convicting verse.
That's a deep book, man.
Yeah,
or chapter or letter or whatever you want to.
Right.
I've missed the last couple of weeks your Bible study for sure. I've missed being there for that. Hopefully, I'll be back next week and be able to hear it. I know the students are enjoying it. So, anything else you want to talk about today?
Oh, tons of stuff. But we're out of time.
How about the Super Bowl? You want to talk about Super Bowl?
Oh gosh, I need to stop thinking about the Super Bowl.
Bunny Bun. What's his name?
Bad Bunny.
Bad Bunny. What an ironic name. Bad Bunny, and his words are really just vulgar.
This is one of those examples where I need to listen to music to change my attitude.
Yes, there you go. You know, one thing I've noticed about just the rap music, or I keep saying rap, I guess it's hip hop, depending on how you want to say it. But it's very, how can I say this? Phallic oriented.
Yes.
And it's not just phallic oriented. It's hey, you know, I have one, and this is what I'm going to do with it.
Right.
It just freaks me out. Nowhere else in the world that I know of, that's a prevalent situation.
Yeah, and it's right in your face, too.
Oh my gosh, is it?
Like if that were made
It's
into
crazy.
a video, it would be illegal.
It would be a quadruple X. It would be illegal.
Right. Not just I have one and this is what I'm going to do with it, but this is its characteristics and this is what other people say about it. And
yeah, and this is what I'm going to do with it whenever I go out on a date. Just to be honest with you.
Yep.
And it is so degrading.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm speechless. I just don't know how, a whole organization, people with a lot of money can get together and go, yeah, this is what we want you to do this. We want you to talk about this. Boy, but we buy it up, man.
Isn't it interesting, though, how the most vile things can just be concealed in a musical arrangement and all of a sudden it's okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. But
even for Christians.
Absolutely. So I guess we're imperfect creatures. I think we are. I think we're imperfect creatures created by God. By God. All right, Chris, anything you want to talk about?
No, I'm good.
All right, guys, we appreciate it. I think we went just under an hour today.
Yep.
Episode 106. Donna, I love you. See you soon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to y'all next week.